Test, test. We lost one of our panelists.
The registration desk.
Oh, we did? Ah, okay. Give him 30 seconds, just so you know you're in the right place. This is always on, always connected, traditional media transformed. We're going to talk about mobile and cable, sort of how, we're going to talk a little bit about just how distribution is evolving and then how that translates to content creation and monetization. There we go. You did.
All right.
So let me actually have this nice little intro I wrote. Be ashamed not to say it. Mobile web's expected to overtake web traffic. There's all these announcements about over-the-top content coming from CBS and ESPN, Tennis Channel on our panel. So, we're kind of trying today to talk about what some of the threats are to media owners, how do owners of IP retool for sort of this new environment, and what does a holistic strategy look like today? So let me introduce our panelists. I'm going to introduce them. They're going to talk a little bit about what their company does for a second or two. We'll start with Audra on the end, Vice President of Media and Entertainment for GfK North America, research company. Can you sort of tell us a little bit about how GfK is positioned in the research world?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on this panel. So yeah, Audra Preluck, it's great to be here today, and I'm Vice President of Consulting for Media and Entertainment clients. So basically what I do is primary attitudinal market research, helping you fill in the blanks on the attitudes and behaviors and why people are using what they're using to consume content. We are a top 5 global market research company. We conduct research in 100 countries every day. And here in the US, my clients are TV networks and studios. So we have a smattering of terrific primary and secondary research, including GfK MRI, which is part of our company as well. And on the primary research side, we do everything from brand tracking and brand health studies. And again, this is not just media and entertainment, but across all industries: automotive, healthcare, consumer products, technology, et cetera. So a lot of brand work, content testing work, and also advertising effectiveness work. And on the syndicated research side, we have what's called the Home Technology Monitor, which provides overarching trends in media on a variety of different topics that are client-driven. So the topics this year have been on over-the-top television, content consumption. We also did one on comparing streaming services. And let's see, what else have we done? We did our ownership and trend study for the 34th year in a row. So there's quite a bit of information that we have at our fingertips to help our clients answer their key strategic business questions.
Okay, just for not to insult anybody in the room, but over the top is direct to consumer. Some people may not know that. Next we have Kurt. Hey, is that a silent K on the or a hard K on your last name?
If you think of a sneeze, that's the best pronunciation. So Knudsen, God bless you.
So Kurt's best known as the Cyber Guy. Kurt's the Cyber Guy. Created largest tech lifestyle content franchise on television, regular contributor to Fox and Friends, Fox Business Channel, NBC Today Show. But like, what's your sort of angle on cyber news? How do you?
My angle is hanging out with people that are smart, like the ones in this room, and listening to people like Audra, where we were doing this study in advance or prep for about the last half hour of this panel, and Sean got us all together, and there's Audra. Man, everybody here is so intelligent. You're like, it's just one of those things that is my focus, which is I'm curious. I love to know how all this works. I love to see how the consumer is evolving with regard to media consumption over Since I've been doing this in 1996, I started reporting on technology. So what I do in a nutshell is simply listen to the smart people like this. How I got up here, I don't even know, but I'll add what I can.
You play dumb.
No, I don't play dumb. I am really dumb.
You are so you can relate to the average. So you're talking to America.
You know, I speak to a main consumer, and it started with television, and now we added in a business consumer, and often sought out by technology companies and media companies just to give them advice in terms of where content is going and how to attract and retain an audience as it relates to where entertainment started and what we're talking about today, OTT versus taking media on the go.
Okay, great. And next we have Greg Fortell, partner at AT Kearney's Media and Consumer Industries Retail Practice, 20 years in the biz, leader of the firm's global focus on confluence in media and marketing. So tell us like why someone would pay you, Greg, a lot of money to come to their business.
Well, I mean, we're in the business of giving our clients the options and the data they need to make the business decisions. So we'll frame them up in a way that says, okay, if you choose this way versus that way, these are the strategic implications of doing that. We'll do a lot of work on the operational components of that. So if a telco is going to launch an OTT service, how do they actually physically make that happen? So we'll combine that strategic valuation question with the nuts and bolts of actually bringing those products or those capabilities to market in a profitable way.
What are some of your clients?
We and I in particular work with most of the major telcos. And in the US, we have a global practice that's looking at telcos around the world. And then my other clients tend to be consumer products companies, big marketers.
Okay. Next, we have Adam Ware, Senior Vice President, Head of Digital Media at the Tennis Channel. Adam's been in the business for a long time, figuring stuff out for a while. Tell us kind of what the value, it seems pretty obvious what the value proposition of Tennis Channel is, but
we have tennis. You know, it's interesting because in this room about 20 years ago is where we presented to, I used to work at the Fox network. So we picked up a little thing called the NFL back then. And it was a tipping point in the business. And this room is where we actually met with the affiliates and told them that we had the NFL and here's what we're going to do with it. And we're going to have John Madden come over and Pat Summerall and do the play-by-play and stuff like that. And it was kind of revolutionary. And what's happening right now in our business is revolutionary again. I mean, we're seeing a tremendous amount of activity just in the last 2 weeks alone, where major media companies are moving, you know, high quality video, high quality program experiences and taking it directly to the consumer, while at the same time staying within the current ecosystem. So for us, what we did last May is we decided to launch a service that was not only Tennis Channel and a TV Everywhere version of it, but also a second channel called Tennis Channel Plus. And it was content that was not on Tennis Channel. And they both lived in the same app. So you would be able to authenticate the TV Everywhere feed and then just click over and subscribe to Tennis Channel Plus. And between the two, you would literally have access to tons of, you know, live tennis. Over, I think, just on Tennis Channel Plus, it was 350 plus live matches a year. And it was a first, and it was great, and we were very happy, and it works in a lot of ways. I think the best example of it working is we have a great partner in New Lion who's powering the whole experience for us, and they have a client also called Big Ten Networks, and Big Ten Networks just announced they're doing something called Big Ten Plus, I think, which sounds a lot like what we did with Tennis Channel Plus, and so the more the merrier, and it's been going quite well. So.
Okay, we'll get a little more into that.
Yeah.
Next we have Jeff Schultz, CBS, CBS Interactive, leads business strategy development for brands like TV Guide, Last.fm, Metro Lyrics. Explain a little bit more about this division you're working with. It sounds like you're very much about discovery.
That's right. Yeah, no, that is right. So so CBS Interactive is the online arm of CBS Corp, and comprises both the CBS branded and non-CBS branded businesses in the U.S. And so CBS branded is entertainment, sports, and news at CBS.com, CBS News, CBS Sports Online. And that's not my half of the business. I expect we're going to spend some time talking about that half of the business, and I'm happy to. But I tend to focus on content as a third party, not content as a first party. CBS is in the content production and distribution business. I manage business development, strategic deals for a group of businesses called the Media Group, which is TV, movies, music, games, and food. TV.com, TV Guide, Metacritic, Metrolyrics, Last.fm, and Chow, our food property. Collectively, over 100 million uniques. But with the exception of Chow, all the other properties are essentially about music, about TV, about games, about movies and more. And so we wind up focusing very much on discovery and engagement, helping people find what to watch, helping people discover the best content. Whereas CBS, of course, is in the first party entertainment business, in the business of assembling audiences and entertaining with shows.
Cool. Next and last, certainly not least. Yes, exactly. We have Jason Rovo. So Jason is Vice President of Content and Development for Aura TV. He's a 3-time Emmy-nominated producer.
Never a winner.
And so Aura TV Network has Larry King now, Off the Grid with Jesse Ventura, William Shatner's Brown Bag wine tasting. I see a pattern developing here. To explain, why the consumer needs Aura TV and when Larry King's audience went online, or when do you expect them to come online?
Well, they are online. That's what's so exciting about Aura is, we took someone like Larry who, admittedly is an older gentleman who, had a traditionally older audience, 25 years of Larry King Live on CNN, which was, appointment viewing for a lot of people. And, what's interesting about Larry is he is an innovator in a lot of ways because he went from, the first national call-in radio show to the first international live talk show on TV, and now he's sort of taking the show online. So what we're finding is that there's an audience for him that's much younger who may not have seen or experienced or consumed the interviews that he was doing on cable, and we're able to target them in a different way.
What's the angle of Larry? Like, is it just very similar to what he was doing on CNN, or is there?
It's very similar. It's a 30-minute show versus a 60-minute show. It's not live. We still talk to newsmakers and celebrities and talk about issues, but it gives him an opportunity to be more personal, to be a little bit more low key than he was on CNN. And like I said, we would at CNN we would sort of program the show for the broadest possible audience, trying to get as many people interested in a topic or a person as possible. But now, we're programming some of the guests on the show, who he normally wouldn't have talked to. He's sort of had a lot of rappers on and done a lot of great interviews with people he, wouldn't have talked to in the past. And that's part of the way that we're getting this audience is through these new guests that hasn't really talked to.
There's no plans for cable distribution or syndication of this content, syndication in traditional media?
Well, there is, and we are, yeah. We're Aura.tv is our destination, but we're also seen on some of these, over-the-top apps, and we're on Hulu and Roku.
No, I'm talking about like syndicated TV or cable TV.
Oh yeah, well no, that's part of our multi-platform approach. Is we have sort of licensing distribution agreements with TV networks around the world. So the show was created, the program was created for an online audience, a digital audience, but we're finding that there's still some life left in TV for his show.
Is there a tagline for Aura TV?
There is. Big personality.
Big personality. Okay, that makes sense based on Jesse Ventura and
he has a big personality. Yeah.
So I'm going to sort of bring up the topic I talked about in the beginning. ESPN announced plans to start online subscription service centered on the NBA, CBS and HBO last week. We have Tennis Channel. A couple of questions, but I think I know the answer. But why? And why is this taking so long? Why is it taking so long to do this? They've had so much content for so long. You know, what's been the issue? And you know, why will this work? What are the ripple effects? So maybe Jason or Kurt, either one of you can kind of have it, and anybody else after that.
Jason's probably more skilled than I am at answering that, but I can speak to the consumer and some other research. But
well, Jason, why? No, I mean, sorry, not Jason. Adam. Really, Adam. Why? You know, why is it taking so long? What are the difficulties in getting this done?
A few things. I think first is technology, right? I don't think that technology was at a place where you can deliver a reliable signal, programming experience that was of similar quality as you found on a big HD set. I think the devices themselves have gotten better. You know, the screens have gotten bigger and so on. And so finally, technology has allowed it. And I think the cost of entry as well on a tech basis made it difficult for people to get into the streaming business and get into the app business. So I think that's helped for sure. It's created the conditions for people to enter. I think the second piece, which is probably more fundamental, is programming rights, right? And whether or not you as a content owner are going to take your rights and distribute it to someone who is paying you a guaranteed subscription fee of, you know, 5 cents to $6, regardless of your ratings. And you're going to collect that month in, month out. And so I think that's the first question that everyone sits around and says, okay, so you know, what do we do? You know, how do we take advantage of this new technology? How do we make sure, as a consumer is telling us they want to access it in and out of the home, they want to access it in all different places, you know, how do we do that? How do we go direct to the consumer without really, you know, making the current ecosystem of getting paid sub fees, you know, overly challenged? I think that's the second part. I think the third part really relates to the off-net syndication market. And so CBS, for instance, you know, is just actually went up yesterday, which is terrific. They made the announcement, now it's up. Has taken a lot of programming that they would have normally put into domestic syndication. And instead, they're now creating more windows to that programming and putting it on their app. And betting that someone will pay to access that. And I think for the longest time, people weren't even willing to consider that. I think they wanted to go sell it to the normal buyers of off-net programming. So I think all those things have contributed to it. For us, specifically, it was a very interesting challenge because, you know, we're an independently owned network. So we have one channel. And you know, tennis is a unique game in the fact that it's almost like March Madness every week, right? You have tons of tennis going on. You know, you can have 3 or 4 tournaments going on in a week. This week alone, I think we have 3 tournaments going on. And the question is, how do you deliver all of that via one channel? So what we could have done is we could have gone to our cable partners and said to them, we'd like to launch a second channel. Take all this other stuff that we can't put as first channel, how would you like to carry it? And I think the answer probably would have been like, you know, we don't have any room, or we're not going to pay you for that. You know? The second thing we could have done is sort of done what the WWE did, right? And said, you know what, well, we're going to launch our own channel. We're going to go direct to the consumer. And I think that was a very interesting strategy, and you know, they've sold, I don't know, 800,000 subscriptions to that, which is pretty decent. But they're not in business directly with the cable company except for the pay-per-view events. So we tried to come up with a hybrid model, right? Which was, how do we launch a channel so that we can keep Tennis Channel as a dedicated channel for the traditional ecosystem, and how do we launch an over-the-top service? And our solution was, let's include our affiliate partners and give them a piece of our profits. So we've launched an over-the-top service, you know, going a la carte by including our affiliates.
The cable operators.
Cable operator, you know, the MVPDs. So the cable operator, DirecTV.
So you're giving them share of the revenue.
Share the profits.
Share the profit.
But it was important to have that dance with them,
that
right?
word.
Otherwise, they would be all ticked off that you've gone perhaps what they would consider and eroded their rights to your content as a cable MSO, right? So you brought them in so that everybody's happy.
Absolutely. I think, I think for us it was, if we don't do this, and we're your advocate here, we're trying to, buy all this great tennis to serve your subscribers. If we don't do it, someone's going to do it. And you don't have a relationship with that someone. Could be the leagues, could be the governing bodies, could be whatever. Let us do it. Let us take all the risk. Let us build the app. Let us do all these types of things. Let us market it to our existing subscribers, and we'll cut you in.
Can I ask you in terms of, I know you're a single owner, but what's the accountability? And then what's really the culture internally of a traditional media company, a TV cable network, in taking that risk? You're absorbing all the risk, and what are you looking for? What's the outcome? When do you say, hey, it's successful, or when do you look for that to become profitable? Is it 3 years? Is it 5 years? Is it one of those things it's such a gamble that we just can't put our finger on it yet, but we know we need to be down this path?
So there's a lot of considerations, right? So there's a lot in that question. I think big media companies have a hard time, engaging on new opportunities because there's so many existing businesses and therefore so much revenue they can lose. And it's very hard to get all the different departments in one room who are in the business of syndicated content out and get everyone to agree that we have a long-term view of putting content out. So I think media companies have a hard time doing these, big media companies have a hard time just entering the space quickly. However, when they decide to enter the space, they do it and do it in a major way and do it with real quality. So the fact that ESPN, though the details are a little thin, have announced that they're going to do a channel in 2016, the fact that CBS is now doing it, I think there was a channel today that got announced between Lionsgate and Tribeca. I imagine there'll be more announced this week and next week and so on, as everyone starts to realize there is a path that allows us to serve the consumer either through their traditional operators or go direct with them. So I think that's now happened. In terms of hitting profitability or what the model for that is, I think everyone has a slightly different threshold of pain for that, right? So for an independent company, we know that we need to hit break even probably far more quickly than a big media company does. So for us, if we can hit break even after 3 years, I think we're doing pretty good. Feels like we're on track to do that, maybe even sooner.
Is it hard internally to keep that goal similar, to keep everybody bought in to say, let's say you're picking 3 years as your return? Is it a constant political battle to remind people, hey, this doesn't happen overnight, or?
Oh, sure. I think anytime you have departments that all want to do something that's very important to them. You want to make more programming, you want to buy more outdoor, you want to get better furniture, all those types of things that all require cash. And I think there is a constant reinforcement as to why this is important for the business value as a whole. And then it looks great when, someone like ESPN or CBS and so on announces as well, because you're like, great, we're on the right path. I think the biggest question we had was, internally and externally, was anybody willing to pay to watch this stuff that we didn't put on Tennis Channel? In fact, we had actually offered out free streaming of the French Open 2 years earlier, and we put that behind a paywall. And I think the first issue was, are we going to get this mass revolt from people?
Give us some numbers. What happened?
Well, a lot of people downloaded the app. A lot of people subscribed to it during the French Open. I would, without getting into specific numbers, I would say that we are probably further ahead in our business plan than we anticipated. In terms of similar kind of services out there, we've already passed others that are in the business of doing sort of direct sports on an over-the-top basis. From a usage point of view, which to me is the most revealing, we have about 20 to 25% of our subscribers come to our app on a daily basis. So, that's a pretty decent share.
That's a great number.
Yeah.
And they're coming, and they're there for quite a bit of time. So if they're on a phone, they're there for about 10 minutes. If they're on a tablet, it's probably about 18 minutes. If they're on our desktop, it's a bit longer. We're also seeing through our affiliate partners that people are showing up on their apps. We were talking earlier about some of the experiences we've all had with apps. We saw during the US Open, for instance, on the Verizon app, that people were watching our morning show for a half hour on a mobile device or a tablet. So obviously during their commute, Verizon's TV Everywhere footprint is, New York and places like that. So it fits a commuting audience. And so, all the signs that says someone's going to pay for it, someone's going to watch it in high numbers, someone's going to watch it a lot and keep coming back is great. It's all pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, I got some.
Let me take control of this conversation for a second. We have a journalist on the panel. I have a billion questions also for Adam. But as far as how do you prioritize what goes on? What goes on cable and what goes on VOD? I mean, it seems like you could increase subscriptions by kind of shifting over some of the higher profile content, but I'm not going to ask that question yet. You guys over here, how are you guys prioritizing, Jeff and Jason, how are you guys prioritizing platforms? What are the most important platforms you're working with? Do you see a shift? Are you, where are you focusing on for the near-term future?
Well, so CBS Interactive, the CBS branded side of CBS Interactive, maybe an unofficial mission statement of that portion of the company is called ESN. Everything has an acronym. ESN stands for Entertainment, Sports, and News. And so ESN is in the business of bringing CBS content where people want to consume it, right? And so there's a core business model, which is cable, and which is retrans, which is a wholesale fee for the CBS content combined with advertising, and things that support that, business models that support that underlying business model. Our philosophy is to bring content wherever people are using it, right? And so that's nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes, technical issues. I think Adam kind of referred to it before. The tracks for what's happening right now were laid in technology. All the stuff had to work seamlessly and well in order for people to use it reliably and begin to pay for it. But then rolling it out is a function of business model. And then, so that's the sort of second point, which is even though our mission statement might be to take this content, to bring it to consumers wherever they want to consume it, it has to be a smart strategic move for CBS as a whole, right? And so then our attitude toward platforms is revenue optimization. Right? Is taking our content, both that we produce on a daily basis, that people watch feverishly week in, week out, as well as a massive catalog of content that continues to sit on the shelf, and finding new ways to make money from it. And so, and none of these things are mutually exclusive. Like that's something that might have been missed in the sort of heated, coverage of CBS All Access in the last few days, is that this is all additive. This is all additive. Only upside for our business. We still do massive licensing deals with Netflix, with Hulu internationally, with Amazon, right? We're still making money on CBS.com. CBS.com and CBS Audience Network, those two combined platforms, that's people watching CBS shows online. It's bigger than Hulu. CBS alone is bigger than Hulu. How crazy is that? Right? And so what we're doing is creating business models that support a multi-platform strategy too. And then it winds up being about how good is your content and how strong is your execution.
Well, you have, everyone's producing a lot more content for more platforms, or repurposing that content for different platforms. You have television dollars and mobile pennies. How do you kind of justify distribution? Is it just a long-term strategy, hoping that the money will flow there?
No, it's just the opposite for CBS in particular. One of the reasons why we were able to do CBS All Access, another thing that in the heated coverage I was surprised that no one noticed, we sat out of Hulu. right? We've made a very conscious decision not to participate in Hulu, and now we're the only broadcast network without a channel sales conflict, right? We're the only ones that has the flexibility to bring our own content to market. And so the reason why I use that illustration is that we're very careful to make sure that we're not turning dollars into pennies or dimes. And so we sell a high value advertising product and include a reasonable ad load online to get as close to replicating the kind of dollars we see on television. And then the availability of content either supports the existing models, form of retrans, form of wholesale content distribution, or creates new revenue opportunities. And that's what CBS All Access was about, is saying that we make a lot of money and we will make more over time selling a wholesale content product to Comcast and DirecTV, who rolls it up into a bundle. But for those that don't want to buy our content on a wholesale basis, it's $6 retail. Right, and either model will support our underlying business goals.
To add to, I think one of the coolest things that the CBS All Access platform does is you can access local TV stations, right? And not just a show here or a show there. So, you know, that was always the problem for companies like CBS to be able to enter the over-the-top space, was what's the affiliate concern? And that goes back, you know, to a former job I had dealing with affiliates. The fact that now you can actually watch from sign on to sign off, watch, you know, Channel 2 and watch all the programming, not just the CBS owned and licensed programming, but Judge Judy and things like that are their licensed. That is a huge, huge step. And, you know, I sort of put together, on my iPad, I sort of put together my own little bundle. You know, I downloaded the Fox app, I downloaded the CBS app, and basically I had on one of my screens for the iPad, I literally had sort of my own little a la carte bundle of content. I think the key question is, if I added it all up, some of it's ad supported, some of it's going to cost me $6 a month. The question is, if it all costs me between Netflix and other things and Tennis Channel and whatnot, it's, you know, that could add up to pretty quickly $100, $150, $180 for a service. You know, maybe cable's a better deal in that circumstance.
The other quirk that comes into play with that direct-to-consumer by CBS is that it becomes another factor when they get into those retransmission conversations, because now there is an alternate way to get the local CBS affiliate without having to necessarily go through the local providers. They can go direct. And if you think about the way that fight has played out, you know, Time Warner Cable will have their battle with the Kansas City local station. They'll turn off the local station and rebroadcast the network feed from Milwaukee. So from a network standpoint, they're still servicing the consumer base, but the local affiliate is getting punished in that discussion. With the direct-to-consumer approach, they now have another chip on the table when they have those retransmission conversations.
That's exactly right. I could not have said it better myself. We launched it because we think it will work. Obviously, right? We're supportive of All Access as a business strategy, a new product, and we expect it to scale up. But regardless, it goes a long way to support our core business model. And I think Adam made another great point. I think it inevitably winds up supporting the value in cable, right? Anybody with a cable background has been saying the same thing and regarded as a dinosaur for the last 5 or 10 years, right? We're all extinct, and we say, well, you'd be surprised how much value there is in your monthly cable bill. Not that there's not waste there, and the way I expect this to play out is actually how I hope it to play out, is that increased competition squeezes waste out of cable, right? That lazy TV everywhere implementation speed up because people start to consider it a must-have, right? To be able to access all their content on all their platforms. And if it's a must-have, that's going to speed up a lot of the rights negotiations, a lot of technical innovation. But then also that, you know, ESPN Ocho, right? You know, maybe we don't need it, right? And there was a lot of leverage that was confined in a negotiation between a content owner that had must-have content and the distributor that had to carry it. And waste wound up getting pushed to consumers as a result. And my hope is that instead of killing cable, or God forbid, unbundling cable, because then content's going to get really expensive, that it thins it out, right? It thins it out, and we wind up having even more value in a monthly cable bill than we've ever had historically.
And that's very consistent with every other consumer product out there. I mean, if you think about how Bud Light grew as a beer brand, it was because Budweiser said, if you want to have Bud, you got to carry Bud Light. So if that argument plays out for consumer or CPGs in the consumer packaged world very consistently, and it makes sense that it'll, the media element of that will model that transition very cleanly.
And you guys don't think that customers at this point want unbundling? They want it a la
They
carte?
think they do.
They think they do. I just know that
They think they do. I mean, Adam's right. Everybody I think is touching on the same topics. Like once it starts to add up, $15 for HBO, that puts upward pressure on Netflix. Netflix now $12 a month, right, in the foreseeable future, right? And then you got $6. You're subscribing to 3 of the 4 networks. Tennis Channel, right, at some unforeseen point in the future, right? There's another $5, and
More.
$10,
More.
$25,
$9.99.
$99.99. Anyway, so point being, it quickly adds up into a less attractive proposition.
Do you think a la carte is the future then, like just per show fee as opposed to?
Well, no, it would serve to have the same effect. I mean, ESPN on a la carte basis is probably like $30 or something like that.
Let me ask everybody over the top we're talking about cord cutters. How many people here know somebody or a family member, friend, who's disconnected their pay TV service?
But they all have high-speed internet.
Well, leave
Which
the
is coming
hands
from
up.
those
Wait,
same
no.
companies.
Right. So of the people who know they've disconnected their pay TV service, leave your hand up if you know that they have also turned off their high-speed internet from cable or a telco. Right. That's why cable companies and telcos are not worried about the concept that 10 million consumers today are in that scenario where they've disconnected the bundle from TV, and they're still paying, though, for their high-speed internet at home. So they're going to get you no matter what. They feel confident that there's still money to be made by the mere fact that I think there was one hand left up is a consumer who's disconnecting all of it. I'm surprised to see what my friends are doing. And I'm trying to gauge how does it relate to the conversation here. And I think there's a lot of validity to the fact that the people I know who've disconnected, they did it either based on value and cost. Yeah. And those who didn't do it, I think will come back around. They miss it. They miss the social connection that occurs about talking about programming that they're not getting. I've got a friend who disconnected, he unplugged, he's now the OTT guy, lives in New York, and just called and asked if he could use our credentials to watch a show that's now come back on.
Do you think that the cable operators, to that effect, will offer knowing that people are disconnecting from their subscription service, will offer a enhanced digital video experience with the internet connection subscription, or even like the Netflix deal they did, where Netflix paid, or the distributors of the content will start paying the cable
They're
operators.
rethinking their pricing. I mean, they're rethinking their tiers. So they're trying to have packages that have alternate price points, so that it can appeal to the broadest range of consumers. I don't think, going back to your question, Kurt, that it's literally about one or the other. It's like I either have over the top or I have cable. I'm a cord, cutter. There are clearly cord cutters or cord nevers or cord whatevers. There are cord shavers. I really think it's about choice, right? And so I think the consumer, you're finding consumers saying, you know what, I'd like to have a package that gets me my local broadcast stations because I want local news. I want those big sporting events. I want, the first time a primetime shows up. I want that. I want some news channels. I want some sports, some other channels, and so on. And then they go, but I have personal interests. I'm a tennis fan. I'd like to go download that app, and I like to buy even more tennis because that's my personal interest. So I think you're starting to see those kind of combinations. I think the guys that are probably in the most challenged are the general entertainment cable networks that have relied for a long time on buying off-net programming, which is why you see someone like TNT spend so much money on renewing the NBA, because they're not going to be able to continue to get sub-fee increases if all they're doing is running repeats of stuff that came off of broadcast.
So they've got to generate original.
A lot of
Well,
it.
and
Yeah.
sports is
Must
also their
have,
primary
right.
promotional vehicle as well. The live sports is what drives viewership to their original programming.
Yeah, I want to bring Jason into the conversation, and then I'm going to go to Audra. Jason, you're coming from a cold start with this network. How old's the network?
A little more than 2 years old. We started in 2012.
So how are you guys prioritizing what the most important distribution channels are now? What are you working towards?
Well, for us, you know, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's an interesting and exciting time with all the changes in the industry that allow a company like ours or a TV to be, you know, competing with more established brands like a CBS or Tennis Channel or people who've been in the game much longer, and being able to bring our content directly to the consumers. You know, our website, Aura.tv, is our destination for the most part, but we, you know, obviously want the most eyeballs we can get, you know, the most screens we can get, whether that be, you know, tablet, online, or through TV, through our.
Is it all ad supported?
It's ad supported. We have we make money from advertisements, partnerships, sponsorships, but also, like I mentioned earlier, the more traditional distribution and licensing of our content on TV, on linear TV.
Okay, so is most of your traffic coming from the web, digital web?
Yeah, that's always our goal, and that's sort of where most of our content is consumed. And it's, you know, talking about that multi-screen experience. If, you know, the way people are watching these and consuming these products, these programs, it's sort of, we want to reach them through the different ways that they connect. So, you know, everything we do is sort of, whether you're watching it on TV or through social media or sort of having an engaged audience talk about it, it all being pushed back to our website.
So you were creating content for ABC News, obviously, you know, that's, you know, the top of the food chain, big budgets, and what's the difference in your experience creating content for the web and in what you used to do for network TV? Is it, you feel like you can be successful with such a limited tool set?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, content is content, whether you're watching it or producing it through a network or, you know, an individual sitting behind a web camera for YouTube. It's all about telling a story. So I think that doesn't change so much, but the way that we do it changes. You know, I worked at ABC and CNN for a number of years, and you know, we would shoot interviews and stories and travel the country with a cameraman and a sound guy, you know, a lighting director, teams of people, and now it's sort of working with younger but very talented people who don't have that experience of and baggage the way we used to do things earlier. So it's interesting because there's a creative difference. They're learning a lot, but they're also sort of, you know, coming up with different ways of doing it. So we're not held back by the way we used to do things.
And the tool set has made it much more efficient to
Much more
get the same
efficient.
result, similar results.
Similar result, yeah.
So Audra, and on the end, the research person, is kind of as Kurt was saying, she was kind of the person we were all like listening to, because she's got a lot of data around things we need to know about.
She
And
knows
one of
stuff.
them,
Yeah, she's done the research. It's like, you're like, whoa, when she talks.
we have actual. So this is not just based on opinion. So we were talking about how SVOD, subscription video, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon are changing the television industry. And can you elaborate kind of like some of your findings on what's happening in that space? One of the big issues is that if you put content on there, they don't share really any of the data with you. So you don't really know what's happening. And her company is sort of breaking down that wall a little bit.
Well, the first thing I can add is that all of the TV Everywhere apps and over-the-top content and how it's available, you know, the first thing I want to share is that, you know, ownership of over-the-top devices is, you know, it's now over the past 5 years that we've been tracking all over-the-top devices, which is now almost 50% of households with an interconnected TV/device. It's now about 50%. but the percentage of people who actually use those over-the-top devices is not quite there yet. Consumers are still learning how to use their OTT devices. So, however, those percentages are starting to catch up with each other. So we're now within, let's see, within about 10% of the ownership and actual usage now, which is great. So all of these business models that we're hearing about, all these new channels and all these new ways that we can consume our favorite shows, our local news, et cetera, the research supports all of these new ventures. Absolutely. So that's the first thing I wanted to add to the conversation. With regard to SVOD, GFK has embarked on a content consumption tracker for SVOD services in the US and in the UK. We did a 13-week pilot earlier this year. And we had some participating TV networks and studios who participated in those studies. And what we're about to embark upon is a 52-week-a-year content consumption tracker among SVOD subscribers in both countries. So we will be tracking Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu in the US, Netflix, Amazon, and Now TV, which is Sky's SVOD platform in the UK. And really what we're looking at is we want to understand who's watching the content. So we know how many streams, right? Like there's but there's this black hole of like, well, who are these people and what do their households look like? And how many of these homes have kids?
I don't think we know how many streams.
I think most of my clients receive number of streams per title, but they don't get any more detailed information beyond that. So there's this void of info to understand the consumer's attitudes toward their content. Why are they going there? What are the reasons for their subscription? What's motivating them to go? Is it the movie content? Is it the movie library? Is it the TV content and the new episodes of TV shows that they haven't had a chance to see through a linear channel? And ultimately providing our clients with show profiles. How many kids are in their home? What's their average income? The vast majority of SVOD subscribers, so a couple of things we have learned, the vast majority of SVOD subscribers are pay TV subs. So we see SVOD as additive. It's not cannibalizing television. TV is still king. The biggest screen still wins. But again, going back to that OTT device, right? If you know how to use your OTT device and it's connected to your 60-inch big screen TV, ultra high def, whatever it is, then odds are you're going to watch that SVOD content through that OTT device. And Netflix is by far the largest app that's used on an OTT device, that we know. And so what we hope to learn through our 52-week-a-year tracking is the seasonality of SVOD. We know that there are windowing issues, there are content exclusivity issues. Is there exclusivity for the content? Is there not? What's driving you there? I mean, there's so many questions we have yet to answer. But we've
Do you have any titillating insights you can share with us? Any counterintuitive knowledge you've acquired?
Earlier this year, there was a SVOD show that launched its second season in mid-February. And we had initially thought, or at least the buzz in the marketplace, was that there was going to be a huge uptick in SVOD usage that particular weekend. And as it turned out, there was just a tiny little uptick. And I think part of the reason is because we're not giving SVOD subscribers enough credit. They know that if the content is available day one, it's also available day 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. And the content's available right now. You can go watch it. So I think there's a lot that we are still learning about SVOD content and its importance and how it will impact linear traditional business models.
Kurt, we were talking about this, the Generation Like, this Frontline documentary. How do you see this generation like changing the television landscape or the media consumption landscape?
Well, I think you have most people who's the audience here and on the panel from the core of traditional television, and we're also in that age group that we know traditional TV to be what we think it is, long form. But you hop on an airplane ride, as we do a lot with our friend's son who's now 12. And The only reason he wants to fly on the airplane we're on is because they put on the high-speed satellite Wi-Fi so that across the Atlantic to his mom in London, while we sleep the night, all he's doing is going from one YouTube video to the next and has no desire. And by the way, it's the Americans' new in-flight entertainment system with, hundreds of movies and hundreds of TV shows and books on tape and music and concerts and games. He wants to watch YouTube videos. And what we found out is that he's not alone. Short-form, snackable, niche-related content will be consumed again and again and again by the likes of this new generation. And then where it goes when he's off the plane is, what did that content mean to him and how much of watching it does he identify with? And then when he elects to like it.
We had Tony Robbins in the next room.
I was going to say that's one hell of a panel over there.
Sorry.
But what we find is that he'll communicate socially what he likes in that format. And that becomes part of his identity as a human being and how he communicates with Tony Robbins next door, or how much I might like Tony Robbins and 30 other people he knows like Tony Robbins. And suddenly you have an identity that's reached through social media based on what we like and don't like. The stats in this area, though, are phenomenal as it relates to just the screen usage. And it all supports, by the way, the guys that are here, they're saying, look, cable's not dead. No, it's not. Trust me. Plenty of viewers for cable, plenty of viewers for broadcast. Certainly the day is going to come where the Netflix type of the world in this OTT world will be impactful, but it's not yet. But getting on it early and doing it now is essential, I think, for any media company. And if you're not doing it, you got to. Because, we're talking about if you're down that road, a deal is cut by your competitor or a similar entity like ESPN, and you're not ready or in that play, who are you? Suddenly you're yesterday, and it's unreal. If I can just share some data that just as I found it, I was just stunned. I knew there was high growth in this area, but I had no idea that it had this level of impact. Let me just quiz you for a second. So just between HBO and Netflix, how many people here believe HBO is more profitable than Netflix? Raise your hand if you think HBO is more profitable than Netflix. Okay. At least 25% of the room. Netflix more profitable than HBO at this point. All right, similar number. Will it surprise you to know that HBO is still, to give credibility up here, $1.8 billion in profit last year, Netflix at $228 million. So then comes this question. How many people subscribe to Netflix versus HBO? Who thinks that Netflix has more subscribers than HBO? Raise your hand. Who sides with HBO having the larger market share? It's 36 million to Netflix against 30.4 million to HBO. And the trend is obvious where it's going. Customers are wanting to go into that direction a little bit more. But you're right, they're not dumping cable. They're not unloading. They're not disconnecting. They're not like my friend in New York. And the kid on the airplane who's consuming a lot of YouTube, he still has his favorite shows, and his parents still have pay TV when he gets home, and there's pay TV in the UK when he gets there to watch his favorite shows. It's just that when he's on the go, when he has that second screen out and about, he's not tuning back into the everywhere of the origins of cable TV. And although I, as a consumer, try to, I find it a flawed experience. I like the idea that I can take all my TV with me, but it doesn't really work all the time. And it's more of a hassle than it is. So it's still, there's a lot of room to grow at this point. Right now, for the first time on phone screens have outpaced TV for the first time this year. This is a year that has a historic move, and I think it's pretty significant. Americans spend 151 minutes on average per day on a smartphone, 147 minutes to the TV. Chinese are outpacing us with smartphone use, 170 minutes, doubling their TV watching. And the interesting thing about the new iPhone 6, and then you have the decision of 6 Plus, or do you just stick with a big screen Samsung? Maybe they knew something we didn't know. It's interesting, data has come out that says that if you have a phone screen that's larger than 4.5 inches, you're going to watch 20% more video on your smartphone. Wow, I'm glad I got the Plus. And guess what? I'm thinking, well, does that feel right? Yeah.
I want to jump back to something Adam brought up earlier, because my takeaway when I hear those types of numbers is that we're seeing a fragmentation of the audience base. They're going to shorter clips, more specialized content. But if you look at the economics of most major media companies, they're still built on audience aggregation and being able to get the largest audience for the fewest number of programs produced. So to the point you were raising earlier about the large companies don't necessarily want to experiment in this space, it's because their economics are completely stacked against it. And the trend will be how they change those internal workings so they can be more economically profitable with a more fragmented audience base.
Your business is growing, Adam. So is CBS, right?
Yeah, and I go back to this sort of snackable content part for a second. I think snackable content, short form content, clearly travels a lot better, a lot more quickly, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or whatnot, right? And there's clearly that value to it. However, it travels and then disappears just as quickly. And the model that supports the creation of all that video, whether it be on YouTube or whatnot, is an ad-based model.
Right.
And I think if you ask people that were subscribing to YouTube or going on YouTube, would you like to pay for any of these channels? I think the usage would probably drop significantly. I know for my kids, it would completely drop because they have no way of actually paying for it. They would come to me and ask me to pay for it, and I'd say, why would we pay for this stuff? And I think to some degree, that's why you see companies like Vice, as an example, who is probably the model for understanding how to reach millennials, clearly come to a point in their lives where short form ad supported video doesn't drive value anymore, where they had to bring in strategic investors. I think it'll still be interesting to hear what the rest of those investments entail, where they have to get a lot more money to make more content, higher quality content, and they have to get access to a linear channel, whether that's one of history's second channels or third channels or whatnot that could become the Vice channel. I think that's a very interesting model, which is, I don't think they're separate. I do think that short form, et cetera, ultimately does lead to a long form channel, a 24/7 channel, because the ad business and the subscription business, that's what it supports. And I don't know if that changes.
What works for you in tennis for your company? What works in the snackable form? What are people watching?
Well, it's interesting. So to that extent, I think we have two different kinds, and I think we're probably going to start doing more of it. But we do something called Bag Check, for instance, right, which is sort of a lifestyle piece where I think it's like 2 minutes long, and you go to an athlete and they'll show you what they bring with them.
That's great.
On the court, right? To the extent that we can get an advertiser to participate in that, it's great. It's going to be based on TV impressions that they're going to participate in it. That content will travel. Right? To the extent that we can push highlights out, that content travels as well, but the rights surrounded around highlights is very, very complicated. You can use it for news purposes, right? But very quickly thereafter, you have to take it down because it belongs to the league.
So fair use falls away.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
And so the tail, which is, all these businesses have this very, very long tail. Or want to have a long tail, right? It's to create content that can last for a long period of time, create a lot of value, because there's only so much venture money out there that's going to help you create all this content before you actually have to monetize it. So,
Hey, Sean, I want to talk to the 12-year-old in 15 years.
You want to talk to them?
I
in
want to
15
talk to
years?
the 12-year-old in 15 years. Point
right
being,
now?
he never was a cable customer, right?
Right.
When he has more money and less time, I'd be very interested to check in on him regarding his content consumption. I'm thinking it will have changed. And I'm not saying that that means that the status quo will remain. I think that there'll be healthy pressure put on the existing models as a result. But I don't think there's any chance that 27-year-old is now watching YouTube videos on his phone, right, to entertain himself on a transatlantic flight.
but what short form video does do, and you cannot underestimate the value of this, it allows you to have, it allows your fans, it allows your audiences to actually have conversations in real time around video, right? And I think that's what you're seeing on Twitter, and that's what you're seeing on Facebook, is that the sooner you can push out that short form video, the quicker you can have people talk about it, be part of it, engaged in it, share it to others, and then ultimately drive awareness up for something.
Well, and I think that goes back to the point of that, 12-year-old 15 years from now is going to have a completely different definition of content and
Right.
quality content, because to them, it's not going to be the television show. It's going to be the conversation that comes with the television show, or the multiple pieces of data that come with the television show to create content that goes beyond just retransmitting a video signal in a different time length and a different format.
And that's true today. That behavior
Absolutely.
already exists. So the conversation around shows like CBS, I mean, we have a bajillion social impressions a month. You look it up, a bajillion.
It's true. I can verify that.
Over
Bajillion.
under a Google.
There are no, seriously, we have like 100 million social followers or more across, because of course, it's not about CBS brand, it's about our branded shows and then the stars of those shows and those characters, and you add them all up, and there's an epic conversation that happens regarding all of these long form shows on a day-to-day basis. And this is before this has even fully evolved, right? So I do think in 15 years, the depth and nature of the social conversation will be totally different and far beyond anything we do today. But that doesn't disconnect it from long form programming. I think just the opposite, right? I think it brings it deeper into long form programming.
Yeah, I was at Oculus Rift on Friday looking at their next generation stuff, and it was in the middle of a video game, a future video scene, like in the middle of it, looking behind me, you couldn't escape it. It was really mind blowing. And then they're also adding gloves next, where you'll be able to see your hands, because that's actually a pretty significant piece that's missing. You're in this environment, but you can't really see your hands. And then there's all kinds of, they're not releasing the product till probably November 2015. And they were saying that Facebook is really committed to R&D with them, and obviously not really focused early on revenue. They just want to create the most amazing product. It's really, when you talk about what a 12-year-old 10 years from now will be experiencing, it will be very different from what we're experiencing today.
You can only imagine how the social element would feed into virtual reality. Your friends are in the room with you during that, even though they're across the country. They're in the virtual room with you while you're experiencing content.
Hey, Greg, how do you see, from a management consulting perspective, how do you see organizations, and how are you advising organizations to change, to support these new ecosystems, who they hire, how they structure their organizations?
Well, 5 years ago, what most companies would do is they would set up this little digital unit or little mobile unit or little experimental unit, and then essentially incubate it from the main company. It served a purpose because it allowed those organizations to try and fail and experiment with different models outside of the lens of the parent company. Now, the channel and the output has matured to a point that they can't do that anymore. So in many cases, large organizations have had to rebalance their entire corporate infrastructure to recognize the importance that's now being placed on digital/mobile/non-traditional channels. So when that happens, there's obviously all sorts of turmoil in-house, just from the political standpoint. So the conversation we were having about all these different fiefdoms want to have their say. So all that needs to be cleaned up and prioritized in some sort of strategic context. And then there's the question of how do you actually go prioritize the investment dollars to go do that, realizing that the model's still evolving. So you can't create technology that locks you into a particular setup or a particular process because it's going to change in 90 days. And so we're counseling a lot of our clients to make sure they are thoughtful and forward thinking in how they reset those organizations and reset the priority of who's in charge of who. And then also maintain as much flexibility as they can on the process and executional side of things so that they can react when things happen.
So the head of digital will soon be getting an office with a window.
Correct.
Okay.
And you see it's modeled in advertisers as well. I mean, it used to be that the CMO was the most powerful marketing person in the company. Now you can make an argument in some companies, the chief of digital is more influential in that organization. Yes. It's absolutely true.
We're going to open up to some questions in a second. See, does anybody have any questions out there? Just before I ask any. Think of some questions. All right,
you said that sort of the power of networks and aggregation of more the audience and what you're seeing the fragmentation of that audience. Do you see any acceleration of that monetization changes and changes in programmatic ability for digital advertiser reach very, very niche audiences in a very efficient way? Because the economics of the brand knowledge.
Well, I mean, from my view, from the advertiser side, it definitely makes it simpler to buy because now you can achieve scale from those sides. If you're coming from a media company, I've had a couple come up to me and say, I can't sell an 8 million person audience because people don't want to buy 8 million people. They want to buy a particular subset, the right person in the right place at the right time. And that goes back to your point of you need to be able to scale that because Coca-Cola is not going to spend $1 billion on marketing one at a time.
I think I used to sell TV time way back when there were actually ratings to sell. And there was something called a minimum rating requirement, right? You couldn't walk into an agency unless you had a minimum of a 7 rating. I was off selling Fox affiliates very, very early on. And, so 7 rating today would be,
astronomical,
monster hit success. But literally, that was the low point, right? It's sort of the same thing now when you're talking about web impressions, right? Because of the mass of YouTube or the mass of vertical networks that are, bringing it together, that an agency can't even consider you, right? Unless you've got CBS kind of impressions. Right, you got to have a gajillion or whatever it was impressions.
Well, plus the brand, right?
Plus the brand,
premium, super premium content.
Yeah, for sure, and it's the combination of it. But I think the idea of going out. I mean, I'd love for us to be able to sell our impressions directly, and I think there are advertisers who would love to be involved in it. But ultimately, and I think they'd pay CPMs far exceeding television CPMs because of how targeted it is. It's that the system itself, the structure in place, still isn't there yet to actually be able to embrace highly niche. There's particularly on the web because you're dealing with so many impressions.
Right. We always talk to clients about the precision paradox. You can now target to a particular person at a particular point in time, which everybody says is the most valuable impression you can get. It's also the cheapest when you go out and try to buy it. So the ability to package and get out of a CPM mentality is what every media company is struggling with. And the answer is going to be from coming up with better, richer content experiences that you can then go monetize to the advertiser.
Yeah, I think you brought up one of the most important trends in the advertising part of our business model, and we've been focusing on the other part on getting paid for content. There's no middle. So audience alone isn't enough. It used to be there's like a distribution here, right? And now on one end you have audience, raw audience, and it better be massive, right? There's almost no differentiation, and that's a function of programmatic. And you don't want to live in the middle where you have a slightly, premium brand or slightly premium content because you wind up getting pushed back into
The cost
audience.
of sales is too high.
Exactly. And so there's no middle. All you have is the other end of the spectrum, super premium content. And so we play in super premium content, which is, CBS broadcast content. It's, CNET, which is still, I think 10 times bigger than its nearest competitor. And don't try to play in the middle where you wind up getting squeezed.
And to add to that and to answer how targeted stuff's becoming, there's a group out of Cambridge down the road from Harvard that have come up with a company called Ditto Labs. And what they've been doing is analyzing photographs, and they have a proprietary algorithm, and they're now moving it into video. And what they can do is scan social networks of videos and photos that we're posting, or videos that are uploaded in public spaces like on Tumblr and on YouTube. And they're looking at 2,500 details in a photograph. They'll tell the emotional faces next to a Coca-Cola can and what brand handbag is next to that. And they'll come up with a list, and they figure stuff out like 12% of people with Adidas photographed shared in social media also like Justin Bieber. What does that mean? It means that they're going to start targeting and targeting and targeting and targeting. And when they find out 5 things that their ideal customer loves, they're going to start combining in an effort to attract and reach that perfect buyer for that perfect product.
And the service gap is that no major marketer that I've ever met can execute on that information. They can't execute it fast enough. They can't they can't execute it with enough content and unique selling proposition to hit that. So the service industry that I would expect to start growing is that executional element that bridges a large marketer, which is spending those billions of dollars, and allowing them to actually execute on that type of information. Part of it's going to be programmatic, but it goes beyond programmatic because we're now into a world that programmatic hasn't advanced to.
Do you think that programmers will now have a new role to fall into that gap where, let's say I produce content, I see that gap, I see the data coming from this company, I see the advertiser's needs, and you go produce based on that?
I think you're already seeing advertisers go into those marketer or media companies go into those advertising 360 type of deals. I think there's also a play for marketing services companies that are getting into that same space, and I think it's yet to be sorted out who will own that in the end.
Right there?
Live sports, that's going to be a big part of Adam's plan, Jeff. Going into that, what are some of the technological challenges delivering 100 or 200 million viewers with a great experience as opposed to cable? Believe me, I'd be the first one to dump my cable out later if I can get all the live experiences of sports outside of it.
Yeah, you're not alone. I don't think I'm always one to underestimate the technical hurdles, but I don't think the hurdle is technical. I think that it's all a business model issue, right? That over time, better technology will allow a better experience, but that the reason why you can't view sports without cable is it's all about the money. It's all just a business model issue. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's changing, right? I mean, you could look at the Dodger Channel as a perfect example.
Lakers.
That I can't watch.
That you can't watch. Or the
You watch the Wimbledon final, I mean, there could be a couple hundred million people watching that.
Yeah, are you going to like that? Sorry.
And doing it over the top, you have in your own backyard, you have the capability to deliver that with powering your platform?
Yeah. I mean, we delivered 100 or so matches from the French Open in the course of 8 days, so bringing in 4 or 5 courts at the same time, live, some of them at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, LA time. And I don't think we had very, very few tech issues related to it. So, and I think the cost delivering that as well. I think streaming costs have come way down as a provider. The ability to actually monitor these signals I think the biggest challenge we have sometimes, fiber costs have come way, way down. Biggest challenge we have sometimes in tennis, just because there's so many tournaments that you sometimes don't know what satellite they're going to deliver the tournament to until like 10 days before. So that makes it pretty hard to try to plan and therefore reduce your cost if all of a sudden someone's telling you, okay, we've decided what satellite we're going to deliver it to. But beyond that, I think the ability to deliver sports on a reliable basis, on a cost basis, exists. It's happening.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our time limit. So I want to thank panelists and audience for attending. Have a great conference.